From the very first page, the tone of the book feels like a conversation with a seasoned guide standing beside you at the crossroads of ambition and reality. Boobin doesn't merely tell you what entrepreneurship is, he invites you to witness it as a living, breathing journey that the world itself has remade. In his telling, today's entrepreneurial landscape is not something abstract or distant, it's the result of seismic shifts in technology, society, and individual identity all colliding at once. The kind of venture that might once have taken a decade to build now sprouts in the space of months, fueled by a blend of clarity, emotional intelligence, and strategic adaptability. This is the terrain he wants you to walk through with both confidence and calm. Boobin opens the narrative by inviting you to reassess your own mental space. He contends that the most essential tool an entrepreneur possesses isn't a business plan, a pitch deck, or even a network. It's the mindset you carry into every decision. He weaves this idea into personal stories of founders who began with dreams far bigger than their resources, yet found success not by rushing toward answers but by mastering their internal world. In those early chapters, you begin to see how patience becomes a source of power rather than a sign of weakness, and how emotional regulation, the capacity to remain composed in chaos, often separates those who falter from those who endure. As the book unfolds, Boobin takes you deeper into the emotional landscape of entrepreneurship. Rather than glossing over common fears, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of irrelevance, he meets them head-on. In his vivid recounting of moments when founders stood at the edge of giving up, you sense that the real battle is internal. Fear is not an enemy to be denied but a signal to be understood. Through honest reflection and careful discipline, these entrepreneurs transform fear into strategic insight, learning to expect challenges without being overwhelmed. It's a profoundly human chapter that grounds the reader in the truth that business isn't built in spreadsheets alone but in the messy terrain of personal growth. But Boobin's story refuses to remain confined to the inner world. He bridges into the practical realm with grace, showing how modern tools and technologies reshape what's possible. In his description, succeeding in today's business climate requires fluency with technological change, not as an optional advantage, but as a structural necessity. You feel the urgency of his voice when he talks about artificial intelligence, decentralized platforms, and global digital networks. These aren't buzzwords but tectonic forces that have redrawn the rules of competition and opportunity. His storytelling here doesn't get bogged down in jargon. Instead, it paints vivid pictures of entrepreneurs who harness these forces, not by chasing every trend, but by aligning new tech with deeply human needs. One of the richest threads in the book is the idea of freedom-driven entrepreneurship. Boobin doesn't mean freedom in the shallow sense of being your own boss. He speaks of a version of freedom that grows from mastery of one's time, talents, and inner narrative. It's a freedom that demands responsibility and intentionality, rather than perpetual busyness. You watch the transformation of entrepreneurs who began with frantic schedules and burnout, only to reinvent their businesses in ways that nourished their lives instead of devouring them. Through his storytelling, freedom becomes less a destination and more a state of alignment between values and actions. Underlying all of this is Boobin's belief that modern entrepreneurship is not a sprint but a journey of identity formation. The narrative circles back again and again to the idea that your business will only be as resilient as your internal foundation. Early in the book, this sounds philosophical. By the end, it feels like a lived truth. He shares stories of entrepreneurs who rebuilt themselves long before they built their brands. People who learn to embrace discomfort, manage uncertainty, and stay anchored in long-term thinking even when short-term pressure screamed for frantic action. In chapters that feel almost poetic, Boobin explores how discipline, when rooted in identity rather than external pressure, reshapes a venture's trajectory. Discipline becomes a form of self-respect, a daily commitment to the person you are becoming rather than a series of tasks to be checked off. Through layered narratives, you see entrepreneurs using this form of discipline to weather downturns, pivot when necessary, and build structures that outlast fleeting motivation. But the book isn't just inward-looking. Boobin consistently ties personal growth back to its business implications. When someone cultivates resilience, that resilience is reflected in customer relationships. When clarity replaces anxiety, decision-making sharpens. The stories he tells make it clear that your internal evolution isn't self-indulgent. It becomes your competitive edge in a world where distraction and overwhelm are the norm. There's a strong sense throughout the book that the world's opportunities are vast but easily misunderstood. Bubin's tone shifts here from reflective to almost prophetic as he points out that today's environment favors those who think deeply and move with intention rather than speed for its own sake. In his stories about founders navigating ambiguity, you begin to see that clarity, not haste, is the real currency of progress. By the midpoint of the narrative, Bubin introduces the concept that wealth built on transient trends will always be fragile. The entrepreneurs he profiles who thrive are those who build systems and habits that endure irrespective of market fluctuations. Their stories contrast sharply with the all-too-common tales of burnout and fleeting success, and this contrast feels like a subtle challenge: build something worth sustaining, or be prepared for constant anxiety. Stories of balance thread through these pages, the balance between ambition and peace, between action and reflection, between growth and rest. Bubin doesn't write these as platitudes, he brings them to life through real journeys of people who recalibrated their priorities after near-breaking points. In these moments, entrepreneurship feels less like conquering the world and more like a lifelong practice of wise stewardship. Toward the final third of the book, the narrative shifts toward what the future might hold. Bubin's voice becomes both grounded and visionary as he invites readers to imagine an entrepreneurial ecosystem shaped by deeper human values, where success is defined not by overnight riches but by sustained impact and personal fulfillment. His storytelling here illuminates how entrepreneurs are not just builders of businesses, but architects of new ways of being in the world. And the ending doesn't leave you with hollow inspiration. It leaves you with a sense of readiness. Bubin asks you to look inward and outward simultaneously, to see your venture as an expression of your inner growth and your engagement with a changing world. The final stories return to themes of adaptability, reminding you that the business you build must be as alive as the world you inhabit, capable of learning, unlearning, and evolving without losing its core integrity. At its heart, Rise of the Modern Entrepreneur emerges as a narrative about transformation, not just of ventures, but of selves. It reframes entrepreneurship from a pursuit of success to a journey of cultivation, of clarity, resilience, mastery, and meaning. Bubin's storytelling makes you feel that the entrepreneur who rises is not only the one who wins in the marketplace, but the one who has grown into the person capable of facing uncertainty with calm resolve. In the end, what stays with you isn't a list of tactics, but a portrait of an entrepreneurial life lived with intention. You close the book with a sense that success isn't something you chase, but something that unfolds as you become someone who can steward it wisely. That, perhaps, is the true rise of the modern entrepreneur.